time, we do want to bring in Shantala Boss, who is discussing mental health days with us. She is a licensed counselor and a frequent face when we get to talk about health. Good morning, Shantala.
Good morning, Bridget.
You know, you mentioned that certain generations more likely to take mental health days than any other group in the workforce. So tell us more about this.
Well, Generation Z, a lot of them were graduating during the time of the pandemic. A lot of them were graduating high school or college. So some of them are entering the workforce when everyone was staying home because of the pandemic. So this affected them in a different way than it would any other generation. And they got a lot more information regarding mental health services, mental health conditions. Everything kind of got thrown at them in the last 3 years, which is great. However, unfortunately, I really see this generation as overdiagnosing themselves. They're always on TikTok or Instagram, which there's nothing wrong with that, and the influencers that speak on mental health. However, a lot of those influencers are not mental health counselors themselves, or they're providing these information without a person actually guiding them. They're just looking at the information without really talking with a mental health professional and seeking out those services. So they're overdiagnosing themselves and they're not learning the appropriate coping strategies to deal with those stressors. Instead, they're saying, oh, I need to take some time off. It's not bad to take time off, but I think we need to work with this generation on how to develop more resilience and ask for what we need and talk about our feelings in a way that doesn't derail a career, right?
So,
We enter the workforce, we
yes.
still need to show up.
Right, and it's interesting to me how this phrase has evolved into something that is genuine. It used to be sort of a sarcastic thing. You know, people would say like, "Oh, I need a mental health day," but it wasn't, necessarily that it was a real issue. But I mean, like you said, there are some real mental health days needed sometimes.
Mhm.
So what's really the difference, and how is it, like you said, that you're saying that Z is not necessarily coping in a healthy way, but then some of the older generations seem to be using the proper tools to deal with mental health. So how did it miss Z if the
Well,
previous two generations seem to be acknowledging mental health care more?
it's such a young generation. I think they feel, they can't afford the resources the
Okay.
older generations can. There are a lot of highly cheapened apps and things online that seem great and can offer some support, but I feel like this generation is turning to those things solely and understandably due to financial concerns.
But you can
However,
stay
there
on
I
your
feel like the
parents' insurance till you're like 26 now. So
that
even if you're
till I
unemployed,
just saw it
even
was
if you don't
30.
have the job, you can stay till you're
Yeah.
26. So that helps out too in getting help you need.
Well, that and as well as, a lot of jobs have EAP, employee assistance services, where they offer free therapy for their, that's risen so much. Most
Mm-hmm.
insurance panels include mental health, and most
Mm-hmm.
employers really value that. So I think it's more of an educational piece for this
Mm-hmm.
generation on ways that they can seek appropriate services. But they're bombarded with so much information and they're always on their phones that I think they miss that
What if people
sometimes.
are afraid
And
of like being labeled? Like I said, it used to be more of a sarcastic phrase. What
mhm.
what can we do to like increase awareness and sort of erase the stigma around that discussion so that people feel safe and comfortable enough to approach getting help?
Well, Gen Z, I was just reading a study, and like 80% are more comfortable talking about mental health conditions than any other generation. So I think that we're breaking that stigma, and I think it's getting better.
Okay.
Just having those conversations and learning ways to cope at work, learning strategies for de-escalating stress. Because, like we were talking about earlier, it's good to take a mental health day, but sometimes if we're dealing with depression or anxiety, we need that norm in our life. We need that schedule. We need to show up. Maybe we aren't operating at 100%, but we're still there and we're around other people. Alienating
Mm-hmm.
oneself due to anxiety can actually make it worse. So it's figuring
Mm-hmm.
out when it's appropriate to take time for oneself.
So how do you measure that? What is it? Is it a scale that you need to sort of ask yourself on a daily basis, or when you're feeling like you want to call out? How can you sort of reflect and gather, like, is this something I can push through, or do I need to make a call, or what is the litmus test there?
Sometimes maybe baby steps and maybe showing up and seeing how a person feels and kind
Mm-hmm.
of, keeping open communication with your employer regarding
Mm-hmm.
your emotional state. Of this generation's more feeling like they can talk about those things. Also, just having something that drives a person. I think a lot of times what happens with Gen Z is they're disillusioned with the workforce. They enter it and they feel like, they can't live on their own because they can't afford it. Jobs entering the workforce are not paying very much. So
Mm-hmm.
figuring out what drives them, long-term goals and dreams, and why are they here, so that they can see the bigger picture. They're so instant gratification. They're so used to that. So be able to see a bigger picture and taking small steps to get there, instead of looking at it as, this whole huge menacing thing that I have to face today. And that just takes time and a lot of self-reflection. But I think it is definitely something that we can work on and work towards, because it's a highly educational thing. But Gen Z's all over the internet looking at these things, and we just need to talk about it more.
And you mentioned, some of the unhealthy coping and habits that can form, and that can sort of create a snowball effect. So, what can we do to reflect on some of the things that might be contributing to not being able to sort of overcome the negative feelings that might be weighing a person down?
Well, a lot of times there's communication breakdown. What I'm seeing often is that they're lacking the ability to talk to other people and really connect. And we as humans really need that. So really prioritizing not only their mental health if they need to step back from work, but also spending time with people, getting out of the house, getting off their phones. It's so easy to feel like we've socialized when we're in front of a screen when we really haven't.
Yeah.
So really practicing being mindful, being present, and experiencing life outside of a screen. It's highly important for dealing with coping strategies for this generation.
Right. And what about when it comes to substances and diet and exercise, and just how much those things can make a big difference, even if it's just, incorporating a few changes?
And it's so hard to do that sometimes because we don't see the change right away. So I think what happens is we can become overwhelmed. We try all these different things. I'm going to change my diet. I'm going to exercise. I'm going to do this. So what I like to tell my clients is, have two things you really focus on this week that you want to better for your own overall health, and just do those two things and see how you feel and what changes, instead of overwhelming themselves. Because you're right, all these things make a difference: processed food, lack of sleep, not being around friends or doing things that we enjoy. We kind of get stuck in a routine and we forget those things, and then I think we think, oh, we just need to take a day off. But really, it's kind of a lifestyle. We have to make changes overall so that we don't have a continuing issue with coming into work or getting things done.
All right. So, what's the big takeaway with mental health days? They're okay, but in moderation, and also observing when is something more serious, or what would be your best advice with how we look at that?
I think it's learning resilience. It's learning that we all struggle with our mental health, just like we do health, right? We're human and we have a brain. So we're all going to struggle. We're all going to have bad days. Recognizing that, but pushing ourselves through and understanding ourselves a little better. So self-awareness is a real takeaway. And the good thing is this generation is very good at that and talking about it. So I'm very hopeful that these things are going to get better.
Awesome. And where can we go for some more information? I know this was a new study, so this is online
Mhm.
about the Generation Z and the mental health days. And what else can we do to, find some more helpful information, Shantala?
Psychology Today has a lot of resources as well as information on mental health counselors, and that's a great place to start.
Awesome.
So
And are you taking new clients still?
I am,
Okay,
and I'm in person. So
great.
I work for Boss Wellness as my company, so I definitely am available.
Awesome. All
Yeah.
ages or
Yes, I
okay,
see adolescents and young
okay.
adults, and we also have other therapists that see the young kids, like 5 to 12.
Awesome. Awesome. Well,
Yes.
thank you so much for being with us again, and we'll see
Thank
you
you.
soon.
Thanks for having me. All
All
right.
right. Be
Bye.
well. All right.